In the bustling heart of Cebu City, where jeepneys honked and vendors called out their morning deals, 17-year-old Rian Velasco walked through the crowded streets with an old guitar strapped across his back. The guitar belonged to his late grandfather, who had been the first person to introduce him to music, specifically, to the rich, deep, unmistakable voice of Elvis Presley. Every night before bed, Lolo Ben would play Elvis songs on the small radio in their living room. Rian, barely 6 at the time, would sit cross-legged on the floor, mesmerized by the voice that sounded both smooth and powerful. Sometimes, his grandfather would pick up the guitar, strumming along, and tell him, "When you sing, I want you to sing with your heart, not just your voice." Those words stuck with Rian long after his grandfather passed away. Now, more than a decade later, he clung to them as he stepped onto a narrow sidewalk leading to a small recording booth in the city center. He was there to record a short video, a simple audition clip his cousin had convinced him to submit to America's Got Talent. "Come on, bye," his cousin Jun had insisted. "You've been singing in fiestas, barangay shows, and school events for years. If you won't submit, I will submit it for you." Rian had laughed it off at first. AGT, that was a world away, too far away for someone like him, someone who had grown up sharing a tiny home with 3 siblings and a hardworking mother who juggled multiple part-time jobs. But eventually, after countless nudges from Jun, he agreed to record the audition clip. He entered the booth, held his grandfather's guitar, took a long breath, and performed a song that had always been special to him, "Can't Help Falling in Love." He didn't expect anything to come from it, but life had a strange way of surprising people just when they least expected it. 2 months later, while returning home from school, a letter arrived for him, official, sealed, and unmistakably from the United States. His mother opened it with trembling hands, and when she read the first line, "Congratulations," she dropped into a chair. "Anik," she whispered, voice shaking, "you made it. You actually made it." His siblings began screaming and dancing around the living room. Jun burst in minutes later, practically in tears, claiming, "I knew it. I knew they'd see your talent." Rian, on the other hand, simply sat in stunned silence. Suddenly, the world seemed both huge and incredibly close, as though every struggle, every late-night practice, every moment he had doubted himself had brought him to this exact second. And so, with a small suitcase, a borrowed coat, and a heart full of hope, Rian boarded a plane for the first time in his life. He pressed his face against the window as Cebu grew smaller beneath him, replaced by endless clouds and the promise of something new. When he landed in Los Angeles, the air felt different, crisper, colder, buzzing with a kind of energy he had only seen in movies. The AGT staff greeted him warmly, guiding him through the process, but his stomach fluttered with nerves at every moment. The night before his audition, he barely slept. He lay in his hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word his grandfather had ever said. "Sing with your heart." He clung to those words, whispering them over and over until he finally drifted into a restless sleep. The next morning, he found himself backstage at the America's Got Talent auditorium. The lights were brighter than he expected. The audience seats seemed endless. Everywhere he looked, other contestants paced nervously, practicing routines or whispering last-minute prayers. Rian stood quietly in a corner, hugging his guitar. A camera crew approached him. The interviewer, smiling kindly, said, "Hi, what's your name?" I'm Rian, from Cebu, Philippines. "What brings you here today?" He swallowed hard. I want to make my family proud. And I want to share music with the world. Music that comes from my heart." "Are you excited? Nervous?" He laughed softly. "Both. Very both." They chatted for a few minutes before moving on. Then came the moment that made his knees weak. A stagehand approached him and said, "You're up next." He felt his pulse hammering as he followed them through the dark corridor toward the stage. The muffled roar of the crowd grew louder with each step. The stage curtains trembled slightly from the vibrations of anticipation. He took one shaky breath. Then the curtain parted. A blinding wall of lights hit him. The AGT stage stretched wide and majestic before him. Thousands of eyes stared down. And at the center of it all sat the judges, Howie Mandel, Heidi Klum, Sofia Vergara, and Simon Cowell. Simon Cowell, the man who rarely smiled. The man who didn't hesitate to speak his mind. The man whose approval was the hardest to earn. Rian gripped his guitar a little tighter and stepped forward. Heidi smiled warmly. "Hello, what's your name?" I'm Rian Velasco," he said, voice crackling. And where are you from? Sophia asked. From Cebu City, in the Philippines. The crowd cheered at the mention of his homeland. Rian felt a spark of confidence ignite in his chest. Simon leaned forward, eyeing the guitar. And what are you going to do for us today? I'll be singing, Rian replied. A song by Elvis Presley. At the mention of Elvis, Simon's eyebrows lifted slightly. Elvis, interesting choice. Rian nodded. I grew up listening to him. My grandfather loved his music. Simon's expression softened just a little, barely noticeable unless someone was watching carefully. Well, whenever you're ready. Rian closed his eyes briefly. Sing with your heart. Then he lifted the guitar, strummed the first chord, and let the music take over. The auditorium fell silent. He began singing, It's Now or Never, but not in the typical way Elvis fans often attempted. His version possessed a rich, soulful tone, deep yet pure, layered with raw emotion that made the lyrics feel new again. Every note was clean, every phrase intentional, every vibrato controlled yet heartfelt. The crowd leaned in, mesmerized. As he shifted into the chorus, his voice soared effortlessly, filling the auditorium with a depth that seemed impossible for a teenager his age. The emotion poured out of him, not forced, not copied, but lived. Halfway through the song, Rian dared to open his eyes. He almost faltered. Simon Cowell was no longer leaning lazily in his chair. He was sitting upright, focused, eyes fixed on him. And then, something even more shocking. Simon smiled. A small, rare, genuine smile. Ryan's voice swelled with newfound strength. He poured everything he had into the final chorus, letting the music wrap around him like a warm embrace. When he hit the final note, the entire audience exploded into applause, immediate, deafening, unstoppable. People rose to their feet instantly. A standing ovation. Even the judges stood, clapping, smiling. Rian stared, stunned, tears forming in the corners of his eyes. His breath shook. His hands trembled. Back home in Cebu, his mother, cousins, and siblings were undoubtedly watching live, screaming at the television. Heidi spoke first. Wow, that was absolutely beautiful. Your voice is so rich, so emotional. You made Elvis proud today. Howie leaned into his microphone. I think you delivered one of the best Elvis-style performances we've ever had on this show. Authentic, powerful, controlled. Sophia added, you have a gift. Your voice is from another era, but at the same time, it feels fresh. I love your story, and I love your talent. Then Simon cleared his throat. The audience immediately hushed. Simon folded his hands, studying Rian for a moment. Rian, let me tell you something. I've heard many Elvis impersonators in my life. Too many, actually. But you, he paused, letting the suspense hang in the air, you're not an impersonator. You're an artist. You captured the soul of Elvis, not just the sound. And that, young man, is something very rare. Rian felt his knees weaken. Simon continued, that performance has just set this stage on fire. The audience roared, and I think, Simon added, this competition has just found something very special. Rian couldn't speak. All he could do was smile through the tears streaming down his cheeks. The judges voted. 4 solid yeses. He had made it through. Backstage, the moment he stepped off the stage, his cousin Jun, who had flown with him, wrapped him in a fierce hug. Cameras surrounded them, capturing every emotion. You did it, bye. Jun shouted. You did it. Crew members congratulated him, other contestants clapped him on the back. But Rian hardly heard any of it. His ears rang with the lingering echo of applause, his heart still beating from the adrenaline of the moment. That night, social media exploded. Clips of his performance spread across TikTok and YouTube. Comments flooded in from all over the world. Who is this kid? I got chills, literal chills. Even Elvis would be smiling in heaven. Best audition of the season. Hands down. The next morning, he woke up to millions of views and hundreds of thousands of followers overnight. News outlets from the Philippines picked up the story. Cebu celebrated. His old teachers, classmates, neighbors, they all posted about him, proudly claiming, that's our boy. But fame wasn't what moved him the most. It was the message from his mother, sent at 3 a.m. Cebu time. Anik, your Lola would be so proud. I am so proud. You worked so hard for this. I love you. Rian cried. But the journey wasn't over. In the weeks leading to the next round, AGT staff paired him with professional vocal coaches. They pushed him to expand his range, refine his breathing, and explore more emotional control. They helped him choose a song for the quarterfinals, something even more demanding, more iconic. He selected Suspicious Minds. But he didn't plan to perform it the way Elvis did. He wanted to add a modern twist, soft acoustic intro, smooth transition, powerful climax. Before the show, Simon stopped him backstage. "You ready?" Simon asked. Rian nodded. "I hope so." Simon placed a hand on his shoulder. "Remember what I said. Don't imitate. Be yourself." When he stepped onto the stage again, he felt more confident. More grounded. The crowd erupted when his name was called. He started the song slow, soft, almost whisper-like. The room fell quiet immediately. Then, with the swell of the orchestra behind him, he unleashed the power of his voice. The high notes were electric. The low notes were pure velvet. People were crying in the audience. Some waved Philippine flags. Others simply stared with mouths open as his performance built into a breathtaking crescendo. When he finished, the judges stood again, this time even faster than before. Howie shook his head. "This kid is unbelievable." Sophia clapped wildly. "You're becoming a star right in front of us." Heidi said, "That was a finale-level performance." And Simon grinned. The same rare, proud grin. "Rian," he said, "you're the real deal." He made it to the semifinals. Then the finals. Each performance gathered more fans, more attention, more support. Cebu held community gatherings to watch him. Local barangay halls displayed huge projector screens. People cheered at every note. His name trended worldwide multiple times. By the time he reached the AGT Grand Finale, he was one of the season's most talked about contestants. For his final performance, he chose a medley, 3 Elvis songs arranged to tell a story: If I Can Dream, Love Me Tender, and Burning Love. He dedicated the performance to his grandfather. The moment he stepped onto the stage, a hush fell. The lights dimmed, a single spotlight shone, and when he opened his mouth to sing, If I Can Dream, his voice trembled with emotion, pure, unfiltered, heartfelt. People cried again. The judges watched in awe, not even attempting to hide their admiration. Then came Love Me Tender, sung with such soft vulnerability that the entire auditorium held its breath. Finally, he burst into Burning Love, with fiery energy, ending the medley with a spectacular final note that echoed through the theater long after he lowered the microphone. The crowd roared like thunder. It was over. His AGT journey had reached its peak. Though he didn't win first place, he finished as one of the top finalists, a triumph no one from Cebu had ever achieved before. After the finale, Simon approached him backstage. "You may not have won tonight," Simon said, "but trust me, you've won something far more important. You've won the world's attention. And this is only the beginning." Rian swallowed hard. "Thank you, sir." Simon smiled again. "It's not often I say this, but Elvis would be proud of you." Rian felt tears sting his eyes. In the months that followed, opportunities poured in: record labels, interviews, global collaborations. He returned to Cebu for a huge celebration, welcomed like a hero. His family cried when they saw him walk through the airport doors. His mother hugged him tightly, whispering, "You made us so proud, Anik." That night, he stood outside his old house in Cebu, staring at the stars. Somewhere deep in the sky, he imagined his grandfather smiling down at him. He picked up his guitar and whispered, "I did it, Lolo. I sang with my heart." And from that moment on, Rian Velasco, the humble teen from Cebu, became known around the world as the boy whose Elvis-level vocals set the AGT stage on fire, lighting the path from a small Philippine home all the way to global stardom.